a report for next week? I don't know, because finance is next week.
I don't think so.
So there's no report from Stan. Carolyn.
Five-year
Oh, well,
forecast
yeah,
tonight. Stan's got the five-year forecast.
Good evening, everyone. Just waiting for my friends to come join me at the table. Good evening, everyone. I am calling our November 3rd business meeting to order. Please call the roll.
President Adair,
Present.
Ms. Beckerly,
Present.
Mr. Brown,
Here.
Mr. Cole,
I am here.
Dr. Pierce, Mr. Ragland,
Here.
and Vice President Reyes.
She's excused, and Dr. Pierce is joining via Zoom, but will not count for votes or quorum this evening.
And you do have a quorum present.
Thank you so much. Will you all please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Board members, this evening we have, no public comment on agenda items. We have a report from the superintendent, no report from our auditor, a report from our treasurer. We are going to have some items in board matters. We have our consent agenda this evening. We have public comment on non-agenda items. We have 2 speakers scheduled. We will have a very brief executive session, and then we will adjourn. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Any comments, discussions, or proposed additions to the agenda? Okay, hearing no objections, the agenda is adopted. We're going to go ahead and move into item number 4, a report from the superintendent. Good evening.
Good evening, and thank you, President Adair. Tonight, I'd like to start by spotlighting our district's commitment to family and community engagement and the power of partnerships to provide the greatest opportunities and success for our students, their families, and the teachers, staff, and leaders within our schools. We cemented this commitment with the inclusion of authentic engagement in our strategic plan, and with the merging of our recognized communications and engagement departments into one impactful team. In just a moment, I would ask our Chief of Communications Engagement, Scott Wortman, to introduce the Family Engagement Team and ask them to share with the board an update on our work around authentic engagement, including the launch of a new district-wide initiative to directly check and connect with more than 2,000 families every week. But first, let me share an update on some emerging partnerships that are supporting our families and our teachers. Tonight, we're asking the board to approve an investment of federal ESSER funds to provide after-school programming at 3 of our elementary schools with our partners at After School All-Stars. They are more than just a nationally recognized free for families after-school program. The Columbus team, led by Executive Director Tracy Ensing, has been a CCS partner for more than 20 years and has developed rich academic content around English language arts that is research-based, high quality, and standards aligned, along with physical education, food, and mentorship supports. Just as important, this program provides practical solutions for working families during those critical after-school hours. With your approval, families at East Haven Elementary, Westgate Elementary, and Cranbrook Elementary will be able to sign up for the After School All-Stars program. Plus, our investment leverages additional investments by the Governor's Office, the City of Columbus, and local community donors to provide for additional free after-school programming at Cassidy Elementary, Watkins Elementary, and several of our former Learning Extension Centers at Columbus Metropolitan Housing Authority sites. That's truly a beneficial partnership to support our parents. Also on your agenda is a donation from our partners at Victoria's Secrets to provide boxes of hospital-grade disinfectant spray to every building in our district. Plus, later this week, we will accept a donation from Chipotle for classroom supplies for every teacher at West, Marion Franklin, and Walnut Ridge High Schools. Soon, we will launch a new partnership with Ernest & Young on mentoring at Mifflin High School, thanks to a connection made by our internal auditor, Carolyn Smith. And students at Mifflin just launched a district-wide service project with national nonprofit Souls for Souls to collect new and gentle used shoes. It's part of our Service Above Self program with our partners at the Columbus Rotary. Yes, there is great power in our partnerships, and our team will continue to harness these powerful partnerships to support our students and families. That's because we know that the more we engage and support our parents, and the more we get families involved in their children's education, the more opportunities for success open up to our young people. So let me transition and ask our Chief of Communications and Engagement, Scott Wortman, to begin our brief presentation tonight on our authentic engagement strategy. Mr. Wortman?
Thank you, Dr. Dixon, President Adair, and members of the board. As you may know, our commitment to family engagement is rooted in Dr. Dixon's first days as superintendent, hearing directly from our parents and recognizing a real need to intentionally focus on supporting our families. As our district embarks on a new 5-year strategic plan, one of the 4 priority pillars on that plan is authentic engagement. Right up there with whole child focus, equitable opportunities, and strong learning communities. We've been intentional in calling it authentic engagement. It's not to say that engagement in the past was less than authentic or disingenuous. Instead, it's to make clear we understand that how we engage our families and how we think about the ways they engage back with the district is no longer the same. With this priority, we recognize that our district must actively engage all stakeholders to ensure that every experience engenders trust, develops quality relationships, and strengthens supports for our students. We will do this by growing and strengthening our school-based family engagement efforts. We'll develop a multi-tiered engagement strategy for our marginalized students and their families, such as our new American and immigrant families. And we'll promote and strengthen our ecosystem of community engagement, increasing the depth and quantity of resources and partners in each region. Tonight, we will update the board on our work on all 3 of these objectives. Leading this effort has been Scott Varner, our Executive Director of Family Engagement. He'll spotlight the ways our authentic engagement efforts are already producing results and the new initiatives we are set to launch.
Good evening, members of the board. Dr. Dixon, thank you for being here. You know, when Dr. Dixon ushered in our district's first ever Department of Engagement, we led a really intentional effort to engage our families, to align our community partnerships, to really grow those resources that would be designed to help our families and really give all of our students those greatest opportunities at success. And personally, it's been an honor for me to help lead this engagement work. And to have a superintendent and a district that really is behind that work to prioritize family engagement. So, I advance this. As part of this intentional focus on family engagement, our team is really prescribed to the impactful research-based work out of the National Network of Partnership Schools and the recognized national expertise of Dr. Joyce Epstein at Johns Hopkins University. Our strategy is built on the 6 pillars of family engagement that this group has put together. And we work closer than ever with our partners at the Ohio Center for Family Engagement at Ohio State and with our state support team on how we work to deepen family engagement. At the heart of this strategy is this term authentic engagement. And for me, it means we need to meet our families where they're at, sometimes where they live, where they meet, where they worship. It means talking to them in the languages they speak, at the times that work for them when they're available, not just after school or in the nights. In multiple ways, multiple formats, multiple attempts, it needs to be repeated often, and it's always done with a bit of grace. Just because a parent can't attend an after-school program or a school social event doesn't mean they're not engaged, and it sure doesn't mean that we give up on them. Now, before I share the work that we've done and the work we're set to do, I want to recognize the team with me here tonight, because without them, we would not be seeing the great success we've already seen this school year and be able to launch some of the efforts you'll hear about. So I'm going to ask them to all stand up. They're a part of the family engagement team. Lakeisha Meadows is here with her son Mason, the unofficial member of our team. After years of working with families and schools and staff in our transportation department, Lakeisha now is connecting with students, families, and community partners, far more than just our executive secretary for sure. Our district level family engagement coordinators, their names you might recognize, Seneca Bing, Garima Waldemariam, who have really been at the heart of our district's family engagement for years. Some new positions are our regional family engagement coordinators. There will be 6 of them. Tonight we have 4. I'll explain in just a second. Odalis Freitas is our Region 1 family engagement coordinator. Carissa Izzo is responsible for Region 4. Amanda Hughes covers Region 5, but also is helping in Region 2. And Marquita Curry is responsible for Region 6, but also helping in Region 3, while we complete our hiring process for our final 2. And newest to our team, I don't think she was able to join us tonight, is Mia Pruitt, who will be our supervisor of student engagement. Now, I should note, this is just the family engagement side of our team in central office. And of course, we have our community engagement and partnerships team, which would include Krista Bauer, Judy Wright, who works with a lot of our partners, and with your approval tonight, my new partner in these efforts, who will be working side by side, and that's our new Executive Director of Leadership, hopefully Lee Cole. And so we're really excited about that. And of course, we have all of our great family ambassadors who are a part of this team. So if they are watching on Facebook like they said they would, I hope that in the chat they're putting in which schools they represent, because we have great representation at all of our schools. If you will, let me just briefly remind you of those 6 pillars that we talk about as identified by the National Network of Partnership Schools. Now, this isn't meant to say that there aren't other good ways to engage our families. There always are. But what it does say, what the research shows us, is that if we are intentional about these 6 pillars, then we have the greatest opportunities at being impactful in our family engagement and support the opportunities of success for our students. So the first is effective two-way communication, not just messages out, but the opportunity to gather feedback from our families. It needs to be consistent, regular, and open, so that parents feel comfortable communicating with principals and teachers. The second is relationship building with our families. We look to provide access to resources that our families need at home, while also creating those warm, welcoming, student-centered environments at the school. We want families to see our schools just as our students do, as a place that's designed to support their growth, their safety, their success. Third are volunteer opportunities. This pillar asks that we think beyond just, again, those school social events by creating a wide range of opportunities for our parents to help at school or help with other students. And it also asks that we remove the barriers that prevent them from volunteering or attending school, like offering transportation or childcare. The fourth pillar is the ways in which we prioritize helping parents extend the learning day at home, helping them understand what student success in the classroom looks like. The fifth pillar is that we identify those ways to include parents in our decision making. That's often with groups like PTAs and PTOs or other committees. And part of our work this year in engagement is to really better track and support and collaborate with those PTAs and PTOs that really exist. And where needed and if asked, try to find ways in which we support the creation of similar groups. And I will tell you, we're pushing for PTSOs, parent-teacher student organizations, because if students are going to lead the way, well, then let's let them lead the way in advocating for their schools. And six is community collaboration. Again, that's something you just heard Dr. Dixon talk about, the harnessing the power of our partnerships across our community, and then making sure that we connect our families with those valuable resources and services. For me, this is the next best part, is that these pillars are already in practice throughout our district and at the district level. Let me just give you 3 examples. First, those family engagement strategies are being included in the school improvement plans at many of our buildings. And for our team, a focus of our work is helping those schools, the principals, the teachers, the building leadership teams, identify and strategize more impactful family engagement opportunities. So here's the great example I always give. I think we've all been a part of muffins with moms or donuts with dads. Those are great engagement opportunities to bring parents in. But our team has really kind of pushed and challenged some of our schools to think beyond that. Instead of muffins for mom, what if we did muffins and math with mom? Or if we did definitions and donuts with dad? We want those engagement opportunities to align with the school priorities and also provide those academic resources. And I think later this week, one of our schools, I think it's in Region 3, is having books and breakfast, inviting their families in and prioritizing reading. The second great example are our virtual family engagement sessions. You all know this is a personal point of pride for me. You know, prior to the pandemic, we all remember that if there was a conversation that we needed to have with our families, we would hold after-school meetings, invite everybody to the gym or auditorium, and we all remember how unreliable attendance was at those events. And during a pandemic, you couldn't have them at all. And so that's when we turned to Zoom. We began our series of virtual family engagement sessions. And these sessions have grown to become an important and regular part of our engagement and outreach, providing families with that regular and open opportunity to learn district information, to get answers to questions, to provide feedback and hear from our community partners. We've now had more than 100 of these sessions, and we still regularly get 50 to 60 families who attend these sessions every Tuesday and Thursday night from 6 to 7 p.m., quick little plug. And each time we provide great research, such as last night's session, where we talked about the thousands of dollars available for our families through the child care tax credit. And we continue to make sure that we're talking to all of our families by providing interpretation, not only in sign language, but in multiple languages. And often we do that with live interpretation. In fact, if you're able to join us for tomorrow's virtual session with Dr. Dixon, we will have that live interpretation available so that all of our families can be part of the conversation. But there are even the small examples. Now that we're one team, our engagement group has really been collaborating closely with the communications group of our team to embed family engagement in all of our outreach. If you remember the countdown that we did right before the start of the school year, instead of just the simple, there's 8 more days, there's 7 more days, we embedded information, those tips, those tools, those strategies for our families to get them and their young people ready for back to school. So these pillars are in action every day across our district, and we're excited to see that and to be able to support that. But let me quickly focus in on the 3 objectives that you heard Mr. Wortman talk about. The first is growing and strengthening that school-based family engagement. And we've begun this effort with the expansion of our Family Ambassador Program, which many of you may remember that started many years ago as our parent consultants, which was really more of a volunteer parent program with a very modest, and I mean modest, stipend to thank parents who stepped up and did a little bit more. Well, now we've really grown this program to be at the heart of this new authentic engagement strategy. Thanks to some investments with our ESSER dollars and to Dr. Dixon's leadership, we're set to have at least one family ambassador in every building, one family ambassador in every building, plus adding additional family ambassadors to schools that have unique populations, such as an additional Spanish-speaking ambassador at some of our schools on the west side where we have those larger larger numbers of Latino families. In all, we plan to have as many as 130 family ambassadors. We've also doubled the amount of time that they're working in our buildings and working with our families. Today, we currently have, and I'm going to turn around just to double check, are we at 100? We are now at 100 family ambassadors. That's the most our district has ever had, and the most at the high school level. It really is, for us, a cause for celebration because we've really never had that. And I looked back because I really have to thank our team for identifying all of those candidates and placing them where they were going to be the most impactful. So thank you to our team. I'm also excited to share with you the next initiative, and Dr. Dixon briefly mentioned it, that we're set to launch with all of our families and family ambassadors, and that's Check and Connect. Now, you might remember something we did last year called We Care Wednesday. We know that far too often the only time a parent gets a call from a school is something negative, an absence, some discipline. But what if we just called to ask, how are you doing? One of the many lessons that we learned during the pandemic is that home stability can be very fragile, and the needs of our families at home can quickly derail any type of academic advancement by our students in school. So, our family ambassadors will each be making 20 of these Check and Connect calls every week. Again, just to ask how they're doing, to offer support as needed. So if someone says they're struggling with rent, then our ambassadors can connect them with those community resources that are providing that help. Or maybe it's connecting to our school counselors or social workers. So think about this. If we have 130 family ambassadors, each making 20 phone calls a week, that's 2,600 phone calls in a week. That's more than 10,000 in a month of simply checking on our families. And so we are very excited about this opportunity to make sure that our families are doing well and engaging with them. And many of our family ambassadors have already begun, but today is our official launch of Check and Connect. We're also prioritizing regular open communication by asking our ambassadors to really help coordinate family newsletters at each of our buildings. Some already had, many did not. So we're using the popular S'more platform to make sure that we're having newsletters regularly coming out of our buildings. So we're excited to see our family ambassadors truly on the front line of engagement at the school level. The next part of this, as you've heard, we've hired 6 of our regional family engagement coordinators. These regional coordinators serve as kind of the primary contact for family engagement in each region. That begins with the responsibility of recruiting and supervising and coordinating the work of all those family ambassadors now in each region. But they also serve to be that dedicated support for our area superintendents as part of the new regional networks of support, and for each of the principals in the region as each principal tries to grow and better engage families. And because of our new team structure, our family engagement coordinators are collaborating with our communication specialists in each region to make sure that we're really aligning our outreach and messaging. So much of the coordination in the past had been done by our TOSAs in family engagement. Well, now that we've taken this regional approach, it frees up our district level coordinators to provide more school-based professional development. They've been able to meet with building leadership teams and principals almost constantly since the start of the school year to really work on those new engagement strategies and to coordinate engagement with other parts of our district, some of those other district level offices, so that family engagement truly is built into all that we do. The next part of these two last points is that in our school-based effort is our membership in the National Network of Partnership Schools. We have 6 schools in Region 1 that were our first pilot in joining this organization. It's our hope to identify at least 3 new schools in each region each year to connect them with those best practices, the supports that come as being an official part of that NNPS partnership. To do that, then we're building upon our collaboration with Ohio State and with our state support team to provide even more professional development, that training, that support, so that no school is trying to do this on their own, that they have someone helping them every step of the way. Objective 2, that really centers around our marginalized families, as you heard Mr. Wortman share. Those who can often be the toughest to engage, including our new American and immigrant families. I know everyone here knows that about 1 in 6 or 7 of our students comes from a home where English is not the primary language spoken. That's a huge number. And on top of that, different cultures have very different relationships with public education. That's a hurdle we had to overcome, and we wanted to do it authentically and with grace. And so, again, part of going to where the families are means making sure you're speaking the languages they speak, visiting them in the neighborhoods where they live. I first have to say we have an amazing ESL team who work directly with our teachers and our students, but we knew we wanted to make sure to supplement their work. And so we developed a partnership with Ethiopian Tondo Social Services, most folks know them as ETSS, to create our bilingual engagement liaisons. We started with 6 of these bilingual engagement liaisons: Spanish, Somali, Mai, Kenyuandan, Arabic, and Nepali. And their job was to directly connect with our families, the families of disengaged and disconnected students. Our bilingual liaisons go to their homes. They hold online Zoom sessions. They meet with families at mosques or churches or family community centers. We help those families bridge that language and culture divide, and it's working. So we're continuing this program now with 8 of those bilingual engagement liaisons that are connecting to more of our families, making sure they feel engaged and supported. And we're focused that work on 3 key areas. 1, to welcoming new families as they complete their enrollment process and make sure they're set up for success in things like Infinite Campus and the Parent Portal. We're supporting families so that they can help getting those disengaged students back in class and back in school. And third, a new focus on helping the families of our seniors so that they can support their senior in staying on track towards graduation. I just have to thank Jennifer Drury and, of course, Dr. Saleshi at ETSS for this great partnership. All right, the third objective. Let me just briefly touch on this work. I know this will be more so the work of our new executive director, but I wanted to share a really exciting, important update as part of our work around strengthening those ecosystems of community engagement and mobilizing, linking, and growing those valuable community resources, and then aligning them with the district parties. And that's the launch, finally, of our partnership registry. You know, as a district, we have hundreds of partners and organizations supporting the work of our schools, but never as a district did we have a one-stop spot where you could track all of those partners, measure their work, and more importantly, I believe, identify the gaps and overlaps in what they do so that all of our students and families have equitable access to those supports and resources. So the partnership registry is designed to at least be a starting point. I have to give a technical shout out to our app development team that finally got this project on the back end worked out. And I dare say it matches some of what we have seen in districts across the country in this registry. The registry is now live on our website. I'll put a little asterisk by that live, and I'll explain that in just a moment. So when you go to the partnership registry, it looks like this. It's a map that you can find your child's school. If you don't necessarily remember where your child's school is at, there's also a drop-down menu. I've zoomed in kind of on the west and south side so you can see all of the different buildings. So you can search by school name or search directly by where your child's school is. When you click on the school, it gives you the listing of all of the programs that are provided by partners at that building. I think this is exciting. This one shows Southwood Elementary. It shows what the program is, who the partner is, and then an easy button for you to show more detail. And when you do that, you click on the program, and here's the example of the Health Sciences Academy. There's a quick description of it, and it shows which schools that program is offered at. So not just at your child's school, but other school. And all this detail is provided by our partners. And if you want to know more about who this partner is, you click on the partner, and now you can read about that partner. Who exactly is this partner? What is it that they do? And what other programs might they provide in the district, not just the one at your child's school? Okay, here's where the asterisk kicks in, because not all of our partners have gotten into the registry and completed it for a variety of reasons. So the registry may be live, but it is far from complete. So we are encouraging more of our community partners to get in and fill out the registry. More importantly, again, that great app development team has now given us kind of a backdoor entry into the site so that our family engagement team, the amazing team that's behind me, can also begin to populate that so that this registry truly can live up to the impact that it can provide. So we're excited. We're also going to hopefully bring our partners together for another partnership convocation so that we can not only share with them the registry, but again, harness the ways in which their power can help us advance the strategic plan. Details of that will be coming soon, but we're really excited about bringing our partners together again. All right, thank you for your time, but let me just quickly wrap up. Let me share how our district's engagement work is being recognized. Dr. Dixon often challenges all of us to be leaders in our field, and over the past several months, our team really has been asked to do just that. Our work has been featured by the National Network of Partnership Schools as part of their Promising Practices. Our team has presented at Ohio State at their Family Engagement Leadership Summit, and as part of a recent conference for all of the state and federal program administrators across the state, which included several superintendents. A statewide spotlight was put on our new initiatives as part of a podcast by our state support team. And next week, we're going to share these examples of our work at the OSBA Capital Conference. So we're excited to share the work that we're doing and make sure that others recognize the effort that you've put into family engagement. So let me just close, thank the board, thank Dr. Dixon again for this intentional focus and commitment to family engagement. I know that in many other districts across our state, it's rare to have such a dedicated team. In many of those cases, the work of family engagement is often added on to a principal or a teacher, to all the other duties that they've had. And so I know that our situation is very unique. So I also believe it comes with a responsibility to truly redefine what family engagement means here in Columbus and what it can do to support our families. It's no longer just an add-on, it's a priority. So thank you for that opportunity.
Thank you, Scott. And thank you to the family engagement team. So excited for all of you and all of the work that you're going to be leading for our families, and that heat map. I just recall when we were presenting and we saw this from another district, and I went crazy and told the team, we have to do that, we have to do that. And look what happened. I mean, you guys done it, and we wanted things to be easy for our families to find out all the great partnerships and the services for our families, and we got it done. So thank you, Scott, to your leadership and this phenomenal team. And I just look forward to all the great work that you're going to be continuing to do on behalf of our students and families in the district. This is really, really important work. Yeah. So thank you again for the team for the presentation. And now I'd like to update the board on our recent announced Wellness Week. As you know, last Friday, I declared the week of Thanksgiving as Wellness Week in Columbus City Schools. Monday, November 22nd, and Tuesday, November 23rd would be asynchronous remote learning days for all students. Teachers will assign independent work to be due after the Thanksgiving break, but there will be no in-person or synchronous remote learning that week. Most of our district operations will be closed for the entire week to give the majority of our workforce time off. This adjustment gives our teachers, principals, staff, and students a whole week off to reset and recharge. We are even working with our charter and non-public partners to help minimize the need for bus drivers and transportation staff that week. I appreciate and am grateful for their partnership and collaboration on this initiative. This school year has been challenging, and I recognize that our schools need a break. Of the many lessons that we've had learned during the pandemic, we know that mental health is essential. And that's what this decision is about, to prioritize the mental well-being of our district community so that we can come back ready to meet all of the challenges in front of us head on. One of the primary points of feedback I received from families since making this announcement is why didn't we just close for those 2 days instead of assigning asynchronous work? We did consider that option, but it would have required an official change to our academic calendar, which, according to Ohio Revised Codes, needs a 30-day notice to do so. So I ultimately decided that asynchronous learning, remote learning days were our best option, as it allows teachers to assign work and give students ample time to complete the assignments. I understand that transitioning to remote learning for 2 days during the week could be a hardship for some of our families. Still, I believe this decision is a necessary step as I consider the state of our district community. Our academic services and engagement teams are working on identifying partner supports and resources for students and families that week. We will be following up soon with updates on what we are able to provide. And I'd also like to thank those others who came up with those different ideas that we're going to be able to hopefully provide for our families. And to our partners who joined us when I made this decision. So thank you to our union partners for your support in this effort. Thank you. Our focus on emotional support and the well-being of our staff and students does not stop with Wellness Week. This will be an intentional focus for us moving forward as we prioritize wellness efforts in our school and across the district. To tell you more about our staff wellness initiative, I would like to turn it over to our Chief Talent Officer, Mike DeFavo.
Thank you, Dr. Dixon. Hello, Board President Adair, board members. I haven't been in front of you for so long. It's so odd, but hello, I see you in face to face. I want to introduce you to someone. This is Courtney Hale. She's going to be presenting on this with me today. She's our Director of Total Awards. Again, we're very intentional in shifting the traditional HR department toward a more employee-focused, customer service-focused space. And so Courtney is definitely leading the way in that area. So today we're going to be talking about our staff wellness initiative and some good things that are on the horizon. So, I don't know how there it is. So I'm not going to read a lot of slides, but I'm going to read this first one because I think it's very important. Why do we care about wellness? Wellness programs help build a culture of camaraderie, a culture of wellness, which in turn leads to happier, healthier, and more productive staff. Of course, that's what we want. That's what every employer should want. Employers who are healthier have been proven to have less sick days, And employer-sponsored wellness programs foster employee engagement. We just heard about student engagement. Of course, we want our employees engaged and showing up every day. We have team activities, we have challenges. All of this strengthens their loyalty to each other and strengthens their loyalty to Columbus City Schools. So, our wellness initiative uses the 8 dimensions of wellness to offer staff a holistic menu of wellness programming. We work closely with our health insurance carrier, United Healthcare, and use employee input to design programming that will have the most impact. Our programming also closely mirrors the whole child focus that we prioritize with our students. And again, we just heard our engagement team talk about the whole child focus. We want a whole child focus to transition to a whole staff focus as well. So, what kind of supports are we actually talking about here? So first we have our emotional support resources. The COVID-19 pandemic has been challenging for everyone. As a response to this, the staff wellness team made a concerted effort to increase staff's awareness of all the support available to them as a CCS employee. We wanted to share some of those resources with you here, and of course to all of our staff that are watching this. First, we'll talk about Headspace. This is a very popular app. It offers mindfulness, staff reduction tools, and it's really for people to tap into when they need something to go to for relaxation. This is free and available to all staff. This is used across the country. 2 local vendors offer virtual urban Zen classes exclusively to all staff 4 days a week. Staff testimonials consistently rate this programming very highly. And every time I read what the program is about, I don't know how to read it without a very gentle tone. So I'm going to shift and read this for a second in a very gentle tone. An instructor guides you through gentle, mindful movements, restorative postures, body awareness, breath observations to address the symptoms of everyday life. I hope I've calmed you all down now. I feel better. I feel more relaxed and more mindful about myself. We're going to talk about some UHC-specific benefits, and so just some benefits that are available to everyone. Just a little bit of data. I'm a big data nerd, so you're always going to get some data from me. We have 7,000 employees who are enrolled in United Healthcare as our benefits provider. We have 8,000 benefits eligible employees, so that's about 85% of our staff utilizing United Healthcare. They have an emotional support helpline. It's free of charge to anyone. You can share it with your family and friends, and they're going to connect you to resources that can help you in a pinch. So the phone number is up here. Of course, we'll make this available to everyone, but feel free to use it. This is, I need to talk to someone, and I just need to call someone. Talkspace, you've probably seen the commercials with the most decorated Olympian of all time, Michael Phelps. It's a popular talk therapy app that connects staff to a therapist. They can contact through phone calls, video calls, and text messages. We feel this is beneficial for anyone that feels they don't have the time to seek therapy, or they just feel more comfortable not meeting with someone in person. This is available to all of our staff members who utilize United Healthcare. Sanvello is another app. It's designed to help a person track their moods and thoughts, to monitor for symptoms of stress, anxiety, and depression. It's a tool for coping and understanding how anxiety and depression may be impacting you. Staff can connect with a therapist or life coach through Sanvello if they so choose. Again, this is available to any of our employees with United Healthcare. Now I'm going to turn it over to Courtney Hale. She's going to talk a little bit about our EAP resources.
Thank you so much, Mike. Good evening, Dr. Dixon, Board President Adair, Board Vice President Reyes, and members of the board. This evening, I will be discussing additional emotional support resources through the district's Employee Assistance Program. Columbus City Schools offers an employee assistance program through Health Advocate. Health Advocate provides our employees with a nationwide network that can be accessed 24/7 for support for a range of personal, family, financial, and work-life issues. Our employees are able to access this 24-hour emergency hotline for emotional support during times of need. After the initial assessment, employees are provided 4 free confidential counseling sessions, which can be either in person or virtually through My Health telehealth platform. For those that might need continued counseling, sessions can be billed through the employee's medical benefits. This EAP resource is so much more than just the traditional EAP. This resource focuses on supporting the total well-being of our employees. Health advocate specialists are trained to address the primary reason for contact while also listening for supplemental issues. For example, if someone calls in for support for anxiety and in the conversation mentions that they're caring for an aging parent, or maybe they're struggling because of a diagnosis, that specialist will not only address the anxiety by partnering them with clinical support, but also help connect them to elder care resources or a benefit concierge to help them navigate through the complex healthcare system. Examples of work-life support include finding childcare and elder care, also legal support, employee access to on-demand toolbox for financial wellness, as well as access to employee discount programs called Perks at Work. The benefit concierge support provides our employees with white glove service to answer questions about medical diagnoses, discuss cost and quality of medical services, and identify centers of excellence, which is a medical center that is recognized by the medical community as providing the most expert and highest levels of care for consult. These specialists can also research and resolve medical billing issues, research ways to reduce healthcare costs, and can facilitate the transfer of medical records between healthcare providers. And I'll turn it back to Mike to talk about our physical health resources.
Thank you, Courtney. So available to all of our staff is a partnership with Ohio Health. They have virtual live and on-demand fitness classes, and they run the gamut for intensity levels. They have classes in cardio, yoga, kickboxing, Zumba. They have something called Pilates, Yoga Lattes. I don't know what it is. I'm going to try it next week. It sounds like a lot of fun. And so it's a great benefit to our staff, and they utilize it consistently. We also have Real Appeal, which is a weight loss support. And the good news is we have a testimonial from someone that you all know and love. I'll turn it over to Treasurer Bohoric. He agreed to this, by the way.
A dangerous thing to do. I recall when Courtney first approached me to discuss the addition of Real Appeal into our wellness program. And I learned about it from a district perspective and the benefits would bring. But through that conversation, it sort of dawned on me, gee, I'm an employee and I'm eligible to do this and I could stand to lose a little weight. So never having participated in the program before, I decided to give this a shot. So I go home and I mention it to my wife, whom you all know. And much to my joy, she said, well, is this eligible for me too? And I said, well, sure. So both of us signed up. Both of us went through the program. I believe it was a year of weekly meetings, and then like 6 months worth of monthly meetings. We've been through that for 18 months. And I'm happy to say that while it was a benefit to me, although I haven't disappeared entirely, my wife was extremely successful, and this program, at least our experience, you often hear that it's harder for women to lose weight than it is for men. Well, my wife beat me by quite a bit. So it was very successful for her and continues to be a successful modification, exactly what they describe here in the bullet, to eat healthier, stay active, trying to do that. and make healthy choices in our lifestyle. So I availed myself of it, as did my wife. So it was a great program.
Thank you, Stan.
How was that?
That was great.
Okay.
You did a good job. We also provide environmental supports. So this includes obviously the physical environment around us, and we want to make sure they're sustainable. What you see here is a chair press. You may see some of this stuff in Columbus Parks. We tried to model it after Columbus Parks. This is actually at Fort Hays campus. But we also do bike racks, walking paths. We build wellness rooms, a whole lot of stuff. And our goal is make it easy for staff, make it accessible to staff, make it be on the location where staff can get it so that they don't have to go somewhere else. So it can be an easy choice. So social support, November 13th, a little bit of a plug here, World Kindness Day. This is a Saturday. It is not difficult to do something nice for someone. This is just a real push and a reminder to everyone. Maybe on November 13th, you do something nice for someone. I promise it'll make you feel better. I promise. Uh-oh. Scott, I broke it. It's not going forward. Oh, we jumped ahead a little too much there. All right, we're going to talk about utilization now because, again, I'm a data guy, and that's what I'm going to do. First, we're going to talk about how our wellness initiative was utilized last year and in previous years. This does not include EAP data. Courtney's going to talk through EAP a little bit next. But I think this is pretty dramatic, so I want to highlight it for you. In school year 1920, we were all in person for the most part until the end, right? We had over 600 unique participants in our wellness program. Last year, we pivoted to more virtual engagements and virtual supports. We jumped to more than 3,400 participants, unique participants in our wellness program. A huge. We had 3,413 unique participants. That's almost 40% of our entire staff. So the programs are starting to work. We're really starting to get there and get people involved. We want more people involved, which is why we're here tonight. Gives us a little bit of a breakdown for our who is using this, our certified versus classified staff. The thing to note here is 100% of employee work locations have participated. So we've had access everywhere. Everyone knows, everyone is using it. We want more people to use it. I'd like to get that 40% up to 60%, maybe 80% after that. But the good news is we have folks using it, and you can see some of our greatest participation spaces here. We have schools, we have central office spaces, we have distribution centers, we have transportation centers. The wellness program is for everyone. So every single Columbus City Schools employee, we want you to take part. We're doing this for you. I'll turn it over to Courtney to talk a little bit about our EAP.
Thank you. All right, so all Columbus City School employees are enrolled and eligible to utilize services through Health Advocate. Now, board members, you might be asking yourselves, what about me? Am I eligible to participate? And the answer is yes. You too can take part of this amazing benefit. This program began on July 1st, and through September 30th, we have had 1,199 employee interactions. There have been 152 Employee Assistance Program work-life cases, and within those cases, we are able to break down gender, age, marital status, and job classification. We are also able to compare our utilization to other similarly sized Health Advocate clients. This helps us to make decisions on how to market services and provides us overall areas of opportunity. As you can see, the EAP service ranks the highest utilized service and even outperforms the utilization of similarly sized clients. Our wellness team has made a concerted effort to market the EAP program so that our employees know about the services available to them. We strongly believe that as we continue to market these offerings, we will absolutely see utilization increase in the other programs available. Finally, we're able to dive into reasons why employees are using EAP services. Emotional issues, stress, family relationships, grief, loss and anxiety, and occupational concerns were the top interactions. It is also important to note that we have employees and family members who are dealing with depression, alcohol, financial issues, elder care, trauma, and drug usage. This data shows us that the focus on total employee wellness in our district is so utterly important. And I am honored to be able to support this work to support our population with meaningful resources to address their needs. Some might wonder, how do I get a hold of this program? How do I take advantage of it? The number is up here. You can either call 866-799-2728. You can also email Health Advocate at answers@healthadvocate.com. You can also access their services through their website, healthadvocate.com/Columbus City Schools. Just make sure that when you go online that you register so that you can access the toolkits. And now you can also request wellness programming. So if there's a program that you're interested in seeing at our schools, at the district level, you can visit ccsoh.us/wellness and click on Request Wellness Programming to fill out the programming request form. And now I'll turn it back over to Mike to talk about the success of our wellness initiative.
Thank you, Courtney. So I've only been around 2 years, so I'm going to talk about some other people's great work for a minute, because we've been winning awards for our wellness program for a while now. The Healthy Worksite Award recognizes Ohio employers that demonstrate a commitment to employee health by incorporating comprehensive worksite health promotion and wellness programs. It acknowledges efforts to facilitate and encourage employee health, enhance productivity, and ensure a healthy work environment. Columbus City Schools was one of 14 large Central Ohio employers and the only K-12 district recognized as a Platinum Award winner in 2020. Columbus City Schools' pandemic response contributed to the achievement from a gold level award in 2019 to a platinum level award in 2020. I want to shout out our team, our wellness coordinator, Jackie Broderick Patton, our wellness initiative assistant coordinator, Samitha Yaramelli, and our wellness initiative secretary, Olivia Warziha. It's Warziha. Yes, I got it right, Olivia. You're all fantastic. You've done an amazing job, and we're going to keep doing more. So we have new wellness initiatives coming soon. We're not going to talk about them here because we're still finalizing everything. But for our employees, you're going to hear more about it. We'll certainly come back to the board and tell you more about it as well. So thank you so much for your time, board members. Thank you, Dr. Dixon.
Thank you, Courtney and Mike. See that tag team? Nice job. And I think hopefully board just demonstrates why we are focusing on wellness for our staff members, but also highlights the many programs that we have and have accessible to our employees, and why it's so important that we take the time and focus on our staff members and their mental health, and it helps the organization, as I stated. So thank you again. So earlier today, we announced a new partnership between Columbus City Schools and Nationwide Children's Hospital. Dr. Sarah Bodie will serve as the district's medical consultant for the remainder of the 2021-22 school year. Dr. Bodie is a primary care pediatrician and the medical director of Nationwide Children's Hospital Care Connection school-based health and mobile clinics. She will support CCS in a dual role between the district and Nationwide Children's Hospital. We are fortunate to have a national expert of Dr. Bodie's caliber in our own backyard here in Columbus. She has been a trusted advisor and resource throughout the pandemic, and we are excited to have her on our team in a larger role through this new partnership with Nationwide Children's Hospital. In addition to providing leadership and counsel on pandemic learning, Dr. Bodie will assist in establishing an innovative plan for the future of school and community-based health resources in Columbus City Schools. Pandemic or not, we know that we cannot do this work in isolation. Our partners, including Nationwide Children's Hospital, have been with us every step of the way to support our students, staff, families, and community. I look forward to the work ahead as we find innovative ways to strengthen our school-based health resources. And finally, I would like to reiterate an update we shared with families and staff last week in regards to new quarantine guidelines from the Ohio Department of Health and Columbus Public Health. The new guidelines incorporate mask wearing and testing to reduce the chance of spreading COVID-19 and to provide a safe alternative to out-of-school quarantining for students and staff. Columbus City Schools, in consultation with Columbus Public Health, has adopted the new quarantine guidelines effective last Thursday for those students and staff who are identified as a close contact in the classroom or school-related environment. CCS will continue to require universal masking indoors regardless of vaccination or quarantine status. The new guidelines include mask to stay and test to play. Under the mask to stay guidelines, direct contact, regardless of vaccination or masking status, may remain in the classroom environment if they do the following. 1, wear a mask for 14 days after their last date of exposure. Self-monitor or parent monitor for symptoms of COVID-19. And isolate and get tested if they start to experience symptoms associated with COVID-19. Under the test to play guidelines, asymptomatic contacts may continue to participate in extracurricular activities if they do the following. Wear a mask when able and when it does not interfere with breathing, the activity, or create a safety hazard. Test on initial notification of exposure to COVID-19 and test again between days 5 through 7. If they are negative at this time, they will test out of quarantine. Additionally, Columbus Public Health also emphasizes universal masking and other public health mitigation strategies, such as social distancing, surface cleaning, and ventilation. Schools will also continue to report all school-related cases to Columbus Public Health. The new guidelines only apply to direct contacts in a school environment. Those individuals who are identified as being directly exposed to COVID-19 by a positive case in a classroom or a school-related activity. These do not apply to contacts that occur outside the school setting. For more information on quarantine guidelines or our wellness initiative, I encourage families and students to join us tomorrow evening for our next virtual family engagement session on Zoom. Our district health services team and our partners from Nationwide Children's Hospital will be on this Thursday, November 4th, from 6 to 7 p.m. to provide more information and answer any questions. Family can sign up to join the session on our website. That concludes my report, President Adair, and I will take any questions from any board members.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Dixon. I do have questions. We're going to start with Board Member Beckerly, Brown, and then Ragland. Did you have questions? Okay.
I actually have, well, I don't have too many questions. I'm really excited about all of it. It's really a wonderful, wonderful report. I loved Scott Varner when you said that the family ambassadors are going to be, growing, and their mission is to reach out to the families, and it might take multiple times, and it needs grace, and we're going to keep going back at it, and we're not going to essentially not take disengagement as an option. And so the only thing I wanted to say, and it's as much a thought that I want to share with my colleagues as to the administration, is this is the first wave. They're going to come back and say, we need this, we need that, or let's do this, let's do that, as they start to roll up their sleeves and figure out what the task at hand is, and be chipping away at like layers of different categories or types of disengagement, different reasons for disengagement, or lack of, disenfranchisement is really the word I like to use. So how do we, draw them in? And so I think we need to listen to them. We need to be prepared to find the funding and support the administration in growing that, because that will be the pathway to moving the dial on kids' outcomes. And so the progress is amazing. It didn't exist 2 years ago. All of this is really exciting. But I still think we're gonna find there's more, and we need to keep listening, because it's easy to say, well, we have family ambassadors. Why doesn't it work? We did that, and it's still the beginning. So that was my one thing, and I would like to suggest that we all look at it with that mindset. The registry is exciting. I didn't realize it's really a database, and it's got different fronts, and the power of that I think I underestimated, and I think it might even have to do a little bit with the term registry, because it just felt like it was a cataloging of partnerships, but it's really a much more dynamic, powerful thing, and it's really exciting. So that I was just thrilled to hear about that. And the thought I had about the EAP, and again, it's an admonition, that's probably not the right word, something we all need to be mindful of, certainly at the board level in terms of supporting initiatives, is that once you know, you can't unknow. So once you know through this EAP information what our families, our employees are struggling with, it should change how we interact. And a great example is the Wellness Week. But I think that it's really going to be powerful if we're like, this is what our, especially, being mindful of the things that are outside the school setting that's causing, but the ones that when it comes up to be an occupation one, we should really be listening to that, because that, again, is the pathway to changing outcomes for kids. So anyway, it's all very exciting, and I probably could say more, but I won't, but and there's a level of thoughtfulness to all of this that is really exciting. So thank you.
Thank you. Board Member Brown.
Thank you. And questions that I have, well, first let me acknowledge, I too really like the cataloging of all the partners that we have, and the ability to do that online and look at it in a variety of ways. I think that's great. The questions that I have are really about the wellness programs. And I guess there have been wellness programs out there for many decades now. And one of the questions that often arises, and I personally do not like to measure everything objectively, and look for numbers to justify things. However, those questions do arise. How do we know that all this activity in the wellness area, our time, our efforts, our resources, work and do something beneficial for the school district, which is our obligation as school board members? Does it, for example, reduce the district's healthcare costs and insurance payments. How do we measure, and again, it's not me, but a question that's often answered, how do we measure that this effort, this work is worthwhile?
So you're speaking my language here. I've been having lots of conversations
Yeah, and
about
I knew that
how
would be
does
right
our
up your
wellness
alley.
yeah, so you may not want that, you may not want the objective data to support, I definitely do. For me, I want to see that our output in terms of resources and public tax dollars and just time and attention to our employees has a cost benefit and has a real ability to create the culture that we want in the school district. So we are just starting to perform these analyses. I literally just had a conversation about how do we start to tie very intentional supports to decreasing insurance costs and insurance rates going up. I think that some of the new stuff that will be coming will be tied to that. I know that our team has already started focusing on that, and they'll look at the data and say, here's one of the areas where we have increasing costs. What can we do to address that? What we're not doing is saying, all right, we've done this. Now let's gauge whether or not it actually had an impact on those costs. So that's the work that we're going to be starting to move toward. So it's a great flag. That's where we're going. We have not gotten there yet, but we're going there.
Yeah, I guess from my perspective, not everything can be measured. However, what are the things that we can measure, and how are we doing that, and are they meaningful? So,
Absolutely.
thank you.
Well said. No, thank you.
Thank you. Board Member Ragland.
Thank you, Dr. Dixon and your team for the report. My question is around the family and regional ambassadors, and whether or not, or how we are training them on the community resources that exist. I believe it's probably for Mr. Varner and members of his team. Understanding that Columbus has a vast amount of resources. I mean, our resource registry, once it's completely, once that asterisk is taken away, it's going to be huge. And so understanding how our people will learn to navigate that and then in real time be able to help our families is very important. Have we allocated some resources towards training for those staff members, and maybe identified some community partners that may be able to help us? I'm thinking along the lines of maybe the Human Services Chamber, Franklin County Department of Jobs and Family Services, those types of individuals that may be able to assist us so that our people could be well prepared. And so Mr. Varner is up to the microphone. I'm sure he has put this in his head.
Board Member Ragland, members of the board, yes to your question in that part of as we were identifying our great regional coordinators was looking at that information that they brought with them. Half of our team that's in those roles were family ambassadors. They were doing that great work already at a school level, in a coaching level, working with other family ambassadors, so it was a natural progression up. The other half of those coordinators are coming from being with other partners, having been serving families in other ways and in other capacities. So I think we've been fortunate to assemble a team that already has a lot of that capacity and knowledge working with our partners. But yes, you're right, as part of identifying more of our partners, it's helping to make sure they're aware of those resources and then communicating that out with our family ambassadors. Because again, on the front lines, we want our family ambassadors to know that if during one of those check and connect calls, somebody mentions a need for a particular resource, they know, that family ambassador knows of different organizations within their neighborhoods or communities who can assist. And one of the great things I think that will come out of these check and connect calls, as we think about identifying resources, Board Member Beckley, as you mentioned, is that we'll be making 2,000 phone calls a week. We'll quickly know that if suddenly across our district there are a lot of people very concerned about paying for rent, And if
Really
that's the
good
case,
point.
then we can identify those community resources that'll step up and help those families. We suddenly hear that a lot of families are talking about going hungry at night.
Right.
Then that's our ability then to work with the Mid-Ohio Food Collective to
Right.
find more resources. So that's the other part of, from a data standpoint, is hearing from those check and connect calls, and we're gonna track them. They're not the calls are not just being made and the information not being captured. Our team has really put together a great call log so that we are tracking what topics come up the most. What is it that our families are most concerned about, to make sure that we have those resources and identifying the right partners to step in and help.
Thank you, sir. That concludes my question, Madam President.
Thank you. We'll go to Board Member Cole.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, Superintendent, for this lengthy but very rich presentation. My question was going to be along the lines of Board Member Brown. I tend to remember a few years before I became a board member that the district instituted a wellness program that provided some gift cards and things to that effect. For employees who met certain, health metrics and utilization of the programs. So I'm glad to see that we've actually looked to build upon this and extend it and expand it. With that in mind, we talked a little bit about required metrics. One, for this registry, are we requiring the participants, our partners, I think is a better term, are we requiring our partners to fill out their information in the registry? Is that a requirement per contract or memorandum of understanding with us? Do we require this?
Board Member Cole, members of the board, at this point, no, we haven't required it as any participation. First and foremost, we want our partners to support our families and our students, so we tried not to make this registry a barrier or a burden to doing that. But now, part of the reason why we've turned it live, even though it's not complete, is to encourage more of our partners to step up and make sure that their services are recognized. So we have started in a more positive approach to make sure that encourage our partners to get into the registry. Now put a little peer pressure on them to show that other partners have done it. Board Member Cole, that might be a next step, is to, how do we make sure that our partners see the value in this registry? Because I think each of you have seen the potential value in it.
Absolutely. I mean, I couldn't more passionately agree with the idea that it should be a requirement on our part. It is an enforcement or an encouragement, but also an enforcement of what we value organizationally is our own impact. So if this is a part of our own measurement of our impact as showing how many partners we have, what are the dynamics of this relationship, how then are they being impactful? There's an organization, National Center for Urban Solutions, did work with us some while ago. I'd like to know what their impact was. I'd like to know what they did and what was the deliverable and who benefited. You understand? So that's just one example of countless others that folks have gone into partnership with us, and we'd like to know what their impact is, and the community can transparently see that as well. So I think it should be a requirement. If there are barriers, without going into it now, I mean, I'd love to be able to learn personally what those barriers could possibly be to do business with us or to work with us, partner with us. You have to have the capacity to do so. And, so to work with us, you're working with a pretty big organization. Even if you're working on a pilot basis or a regional basis with us, you have to be at pretty good capacity to do that. So I'd love to get some clarity around, and again, it's not indicting, it's not finger pointing, it's not any of that. But I'd like to get clarity on exactly what those barriers could possibly be for organizations with capacity that are working with us. The other question, how do you see, I got a wonderful, you answered the question all about on the wellness side, on how board participation could work, but on the AES side, right? This authentic engagement strategy piece. How do you see us who may be interested. I am beaming and excited and ready to work. How do you see board engagement to that effect as a part of this process of authentic engagement strategy?
Well, thank you, Board Member Cole. I think, again, as we have tried to embed engagement into more of what we do as a district, I think there's been some natural opportunities where engagement has come forward. As we think about just, even as we think about those virtual family engagement sessions, our ability to make sure that more families are able to understand what's going on by including our sign language interpretation. We've been testing all that out. I mean, we've been fortunate to have that as part of our sessions, this live interpretation feature. Again, as we think through other opportunities, how do we expand that into the work of the board, of other engagement opportunities that we do across the district? So I think that naturally, as we come across, there'll be those opportunities. I look forward to trying to identify other ways in which we can build some of those engagement strategies into the work that we do all across the district.
Well, I'd certainly like to voice my opinion, Madam President, and that I think it should be, as a value set of us as a board, I certainly think it should be thought of as some sort of priority to engage us in this process as well. But that's just Michael Cole.
Yeah, remember that we do have Board Member Cole. I have Board Member Becker because she's on the subcommittee working on it.
Okay.
We have our own board initiative around engagement, specifically around the strategic priorities. Board Member Becker, you want to touch on that?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Board Member Cole entirely that where it makes sense to get board member involvement, please don't hesitate to ask us. Where we'll be adding value, maybe in terms of emphasizing the commitment of the district to certain things. You know, one of the things I've been trying to work at is trying to figure out a way to somehow let the bus drivers know that the board appreciates them. You know, like, so there may be some things like that where we're adding value. And certainly I would agree, don't hesitate to ask us to weigh in or to attend or whatever we can do. But I think our real engagement work is going to be what Dr. Pierce and Ramona Reyes and I are working on, which is trying to establish this regular community engagement sessions with the various categories of stakeholders in our community. And this week I made a little progress on that front and did my best list of how many categories of groups there are. It's a lot. So if we take that up as a board in earnest, we're going to be busy doing a lot of meeting. But stay tuned because hopefully we'll be presenting on that shortly. And the idea would be to establish these engagement sessions in such a way so they're integrated into part of the monitoring calendar that we're using for the goals and guardrails. And so we'll add a column in that calendar that'll say, you know, meet with FCCS at their board meeting twice a year, and then we'll see what board members will do that. And then it'll be, you know, Columbus Foundation, and then even staff. You know, it's sort of a variation or maybe an expansion of what we did when the first time we went out to the community with the goals and guardrails. But so that's in the pipeline, and we're working on that. And I just have to say, one other quick thing about the registry and participation of our partners. I think that you know, grace goes in all directions, and I think the partners will see how important and how useful this will be for them. I mean, I can't imagine now that I'm a partner, I realize, oh, somebody's doing something like this over here, we can team up, because a lot of, you know, their work complements each other. Somebody's doing morning, somebody's doing afternoon, someone's doing food, someone else is doing housing. And I, you know, I just want to make sure we remain mindful that they're partners, you know, and partners are, you know, co-equals in the relationship, so to speak. I mean, and I know not always, sometimes they're service providers and sometimes there's all different, you know, roles. It's not that, but I just think that we should definitely approach it as often as we can in that mindset. And the last thing I want to say is I was on the wellness train well before Treasurer Bohr, because I was doing yoga in Clinton Elementary in the gym on Thursdays.
Oh, darn. Get that image out of your mind, everybody.
Ooh.
Lord have mercy.
That would be me, not you.
I'm gonna go back to Board Member Cole to finish up his questions.
Got you.
Oh, I'm sorry. I
It's
thought you
okay.
had finished.
I kind of segued into you for that one topic, but it's fine. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam President. The other question I had was particularly around engagement of our immigrant and refugee families and children. In working with organizations like ETSS, what are we expecting in terms of metric? What are we measuring working with them as well? And I'm asking this question with AJ in mind. You know, understanding that the long run impact that we're trying to make here is that we're holding families accountable by being more informed and engaged in the development of their children, and more importantly, that we're trying to impact very positively and progressively student outcomes with this type of transaction and interaction, intersectionality, so to speak. But what are we expecting, what are we trying to draw from our relationships with organizations like ETS and others that step up so great, do great work, and stepping up and working with our refugee and immigrant families and children? We know what we're trying to get from them.
So two parts. So one, when we were thinking about our board goals and our strategic priorities, we know that the board outlined those 3 bold goals for us, and strengthening reading proficiency, developing portrait, and closing opportunity gaps. But from our strategic plan, we wanted to say, in order to reach those, what are some of the things that we have to prioritize in the district, which is the district's blueprint, right, to do that. And one of them was authentic engagement, that we can't reach those 3 board goals unless we're very strategic of how we're engaging our families, all of our families, and using that strategy through family engagement, that work of Epstein model, to create what those metrics look like. So when we look at those 6 pillars, and that training of all the team members, I believe those metrics are going to be developed through that strategy. I know that's one of the things we are working with Ohio State University and with that Epstein model, that once we train everybody in the district, then we know what those metrics that we need to set, so we know what is happening throughout all the schools in all of our regions. So we think about that other priority, strong learning communities in every school. If you're going to have strong learning communities in every school, students have to have a voice, parents have to have a voice, and our staff have to have a voice, right? It has to be warm, welcoming environments that kids go, that have fun, rigorous learning experiences, but they're embedded with customer service, right? They have to be customer service approach to this work when you come, and that means everybody in the organization. So what we were trying to do is those 4 priorities that we're focused on, that those priorities bode well with the board goals, and going to help us to achieve Portrait of Graduate. And I believe that we're going to continue to work on what those metrics are. We're still creating this, and still training our team members and figuring out what those metrics are going to look like throughout the region, throughout all of our, throughout the district. So Scott, if there's something that I missed, because I think, to your point, we want to make sure we're capturing everything, but I think listening, having an ambassador in all of our buildings, having multiple ambassadors in some of our buildings, so we really can capture what we're missing. And then once we said, hey, this is it, we have this training, then we can go back and say, well, no, we're missing the mark. If that comes through surveys, if it comes through, having conversations with families, I think we'll be able to say, are we really reaching this? Are these 6 pillars really alive and throughout our community? Are we really doing this? That's how I see it. I know the team may have some additional information to add to
Yeah,
that?
yes, Dr. Dixon, I think you hit it right on. And again, and being very intentional about recognize that's we say they are marginalized families, those that are often the hardest to engage. And when I think about some of the metrics, it's so that marginalization is not a barrier, that we reduce that as the barrier. For example, as we piloted this effort last school year, we recognized that as we looked at the percentages of students who were disengaged from remote learning, we saw that in our English language learning students, there were a greater number than compared to their English-speaking counterparts. That was the real intention of that ETS partnership, was to then go out and make sure what could we do to supplement the work of our ESL team and work with the families to make sure that the families were supporting those students in getting engaged in online and remote learning. And we saw that success, that by the end of the pilot, we reduced that number, that we zeroed it out, that they were exactly the same as their English-speaking counterparts, to make sure that that was no longer the barrier, that this marginalization was not what prevented them from being engaged with their learning. So again, as we look to the three kind of three areas that we've asked ETSS to focus on, it's some of those areas. It's welcoming our families as they come on board through the enrollment process and making sure that those families get into the parent portal. Again, because we know that for any family getting onto that parent portal is so important, but it can also be challenging, and we don't want language or culture to be the challenge that gets them there.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr.
Two to
Brown.
going about the engagement, and then three for our seniors, are on track, keeping them on track. So again, that disengagement is not a barrier to keeping students on track. I'm sorry, Mr. Cole.
No, you caught the softball. I thank you. I thank you. No, that's exactly what I was looking for. That's and I don't mean, forgive me, because I don't mean to sound facetious. I don't. I just came through a campaign where I heard folks talking about these types of things. I had gotten these types of phone calls even before that all started, when we went into this COVID piece. And we knew that we were missing certain students who were showing up to school. They were getting on and logging on, but because they didn't know and understand the logistics of how to deal with the infinite campus system and walk through that and then be acknowledged through that process first, then they're counted out of class. So you hit it right on the head. That's exactly where I was trying to go. You hit it right on the head. So thank you. These are the deliverables then that we can continue to ask and inquire about that I think show growth on you guys' part. That's that low-hanging fruit aspect of things. So I appreciate that. My last question is this. I noticed in the data set, Mr. Fabio, that we saw this kind of number disparity, or in terms of utilization, between certified employees and classified employees. A number I tend to remember was 31%. Do we, as much as you're gathering information on why it is folks are actually utilizing the services, which I'm super excited about, are we getting some sort of idea as to why folks may not be as well?
We are getting anecdotal evidence, but not comprehensive. So one of the things that you're going to start seeing from the talent department is customer surveys. We're going to start doing this a lot. We have a lot of transactional processes. We want to know if they're working, broken, iterative improvement needs to be made. We also have these areas where we're providing services. And so we want to start finding out, how are we not reaching you? How can we reach you? How can we proliferate? What's working, what's not working? So all of that is starting. I think the jump from 600 participants to 3,000 participants was humongous. And all of that is tied to our ability to provide services virtually. So I think that there's some questions that we need to ask ourselves there of, are we still getting to people? We actually have wellness members who go on site to our transportation compounds, who go on site to a whole bunch of different areas across the district. So there are also on-site supports. We're not just doing virtual supports. So I think it's a question too of, does everyone have access to technology? how do we bridge that gap between folks who may not or may prefer in person? And we'll start to do more of that as we go through the school year.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank
Yeah,
you,
of
Madam
course.
Superintendent. I just want to personally just stress, I think it's super important, as much as we're looking at familial engagement, right, of our children, the whole child, that we're also looking at that from the standpoint of ourselves internally. Again, we've got all the systems in place, and I really applaud you and the team for teeing this type of stuff up. We have all the systems in place to ensure that we're becoming better, that we're becoming more healthy, that we're becoming more aware of each other, and more importantly, that we're closing this belief gap of who we are and what we have to bring to the table. So as much as we're looking to engage the whole child, please, let's continue to look to engage the whole employee as well, and be sure that we're increasing those numbers in utilization. So thank you. Thank you, Madam President.
Oh, you're welcome. I just wanted to say just a few brief comments. The board members really hit on the excellence of what all of this is. As a family, I want to say thank you, family engagement team, because I have participated as a parent in several of the sessions. The last one I did was around the cyber understanding that cyber environment scared the cheese out of me. And when you had Bark come and talk about, just everything out there, and then I grab my daughter's phone and start like, oh, okay, so, but it's very helpful, right? And it's topics that are meaningful and relevant in the moment to families. And so I want to thank you for that, and thank you for pushing and really thinking about what it is family needs. I also wanted to say Dr. Dixon went to her strategic priorities as she should. I want to remind the board that everything that was presented tonight can be read into one of our guardrails.
Oh, yeah.
And so it is very, you said thoughtful, it's strategic.
Okay.
And it's strategic because the way that this is built is the superintendent's strategies then support not only the goals, but these guardrails that the board has set, which are funding intervention support, aligning resources equitably, prioritizing the whole child, as well as building a culturally responsive staff. So the wellness fits right into that, because you can't have culturally responsive staff if they are not well themselves. You can't have staff that appreciate social emotional learning and create these wonderful education environments if they themselves are not healthy. And I know in my day job, my team hates it when I probably say it all the time. Our employees are our greatest asset. Without them, we accomplish nothing. And so it is critical to the success that we create these environments. And so I applaud the superintendent and team for really pushing wellness and being able to create the safe space to talk about it and to say, I am not okay today. I need some help. And that's what we want our staff to know. And so all of these things come in and support directly our guardrails. And so I just want to highlight that alignment, because this is kind of a big, we're going to vote on it today. And it is a big deal what we're doing here. And it's not just thoughtful, it is strategic, and it encompasses everyone. And so I just wanted to say personally thank you to the family engagement team. You personally give me a lot of thought as a parent, and then the wellness team. And then obviously all of our partners too. I mean, all that stuff was great, which the board members pointed out. So thank you for that report.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to go ahead and move over to the treasurer's office. You look great today, Stan.
I know.
Hey,
It's the Pilates.
I was going to say that every morning when I get up,
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
every morning when I get up, my dog demonstrates to me truly the downward dog move. And I am so impressed that she can do that. And I haven't even attempted it because I'm not so sure I could get back up off the floor. So thank you, President Adair and members of the board. Tonight, I'm here to present to you the November 5-year forecast. As you know, this November 5-year forecast is the first iteration for the fiscal years 2019 to 21 are actual. We rolled 1 year off and another year on, And this forecast covers fiscal years 22, the current fiscal year, through fiscal year 26. I'd like to start with a few quotes to put this in perspective. I've cut a few of them out here, but I do have a couple. This was one of my favorites, that forecasting is difficult, especially it's about the future. But it's difficult, but not impossible to do, and it is, in fact, imperative to do forecasting into the future, knowing full well that there are many uncertainties, but you have to make some assumptions, take what you know now, and then make that projection. Credit to Board Member Brown to have provided this quote, and I will use this throughout here, really, that our goal in forecasting is not necessarily to predict the future, but to give us information so that we know if we have to take certain steps today in preparation of or in response to what we see coming down the road. So I think that's very important to know that what we're really looking for is, are there meaningful actions that we must take at this point in time? Just a reminder, this is a legal requirement to adopt a 5-year forecast in November. This is our forecast per se, and then the next one we do is really an update to this forecast between April and May of the year. Typically, we will do that in May. We might also have to do it if there's a significant event along the way that would dramatically change the forecast. We've had one of those events in the past, which was the passage of the 2016 operating levy, for example. And just my personal quote is that this is a snapshot today based on a lot of assumptions. And I know one thing for sure, it will change. The 3 years of historical data are the only thing that won't change. Everything else will likely be different. And in fact, I know for a fact that this was presented to FAC back in October. On the board agenda tonight, I've included a link to that meeting so folks can go view that presentation, which should be very similar to this presentation, but you can go there to see it as well. And on the board agenda is the actual document and my executive summary describing some of the significant pieces and parts of the forecast. But I know that this will change. So let's get to the November forecast. And I begin with this for this evening, primarily to inform the board, again, trying to keep in that, what we call it, the board agenda diet and whatnot, some of the critical things that you need to know about the forecast, not line by line, but what are some of the critical things that you need to know about the forecast. And I begin with what has changed since May. And this is my attempt to demonstrate to you the two things that have dramatically changed. There has been a dramatic reduction in the expenditure projection and a dramatic reduction in the revenue projection. And why is that? It's because of the recent adoption of the Fair School funding formula that will determine our state aid. And that funding formula, as I discuss here later on, has impacted both the revenue and expenditure side. But you can see here that the reduction in expenditures, the gray line at the top, has led or fed into an increase, contributed to an increase in our ending cash balance. In a forecast, we use ending cash balance as the metric that we're watching. That's what we kind of manage to. And then in the new funding formula, our actual gross state aid has been reduced, and I'll talk about that in a minute as well. So that contributed to a decline in cash balance. But during that forecast period from May, which was 21 to 25, that netted out, as you can see here, about a $235 million increase in our cash balance at the end of 25 on a projected basis. This is a picture of total revenues, May to today, to this forecast. What you should note is in 22, you can see that drop from the orange bar to the gray bar, and it's pretty uniform across all the years. That drop in revenue is about $180 million in fiscal 25 to about $160 million in FY 25. On the expenditure side, you'll see a like or a concurrent drop in projected expenditures, although they're slightly greater. In FY 22, that drop in total expenditures amounted to about $210 million, and in, out to 2025, that drop is around $230 million. You might ask, why does that grow, and why is it greater than revenues? And the explanation of that is state revenues, very conservatively forecasted, but flat. So when they funded us on a net basis and backed into our gross number, I used the estimates from LSC and then projected those out flat, just like we had in the past. So that reduction was somewhat uniform across the years. On the expenditure side, this has to do with the deduction for charter and vouchers. Well, we planned for, put in our budgets, and therefore put in our forecast an increasing amount each year, and it was conservative. In other words, we budgeted really more than what we would probably spend, but we did that so that there'd be no surprises. And therefore, when that comes out, you're taking more out of the expenditure side than we actually did out of the revenue side, hence the cash balance climbs. So this is a picture of your forecast for November, comparing revenues and expenditures. So you can see that the beginning of 22, both bars have dropped. They're fairly equal. One of the things we like to watch is the relationship of revenues and expenditures. When do expenditures exceed revenues and we begin to have a decline in that cash balance? It's probably best represented by this graph, and this is a particular line on your 5-year forecast showing the excess of revenues over or under expenditures. The blue line in the May forecast, you can see that we had forecasted beginning in 21 that we would begin to deplete that cash balance, and that would continue throughout that life of that forecast. However, in this forecast now, you saw those bars were much more closely aligned, and we're actually forecasting a projection or forecasting a growth in our cash balance. We'll build a cash balance in 22 and 23, kind of break even in 24, and then we begin our decline out in 25. So this change in how we are funded has pushed that turn in our cash balance out to 25. So here's the cash balance picture. The blue and yellow lines go together from May. The yellow line representing the reserved cash, reserved for 30 days of expenditures. And back in May, you can see that our cash balance began declining, like I said, in 21 on a projected basis. Still positive at the end of 25, but we did not meet our 30-day projected cash balance because that yellow line goes negative. In this November forecast, you'll see that both of them have moved upwards. You see the building of a cash balance out to about 24, 25 when it starts to decline. And then there's the reserve. The gray line is the reserved ending cash balance. You see both of them are positive throughout the forecast. So not only is the actual cash positive, but we also maintain that 30 days cash balance. What are the major factors that fed into this change? And as I said, it's state aid on the revenue side. The new funding formula funds students where educated. So no longer do all the charter and voucher students come into our formula on the revenue side and then go out on the expenditure side through deductions. They don't appear in our formula calculation at all. So you can see here from a state aid picture, that line in the forecast, that it's dropped from $356 million down to $169 million in 22. And from, again, 356, notice in the May forecast, that was a flat forecast. And now in this forecast, 169 million in 22. And in 23, it rises to 181, and then I keep that flat in the forecast because we're outside the current state biennial budget. And those two estimates, the 169 and the 181, were the LSC estimates that we had during the budget bill discussions. I don't have a better estimate at this time. ODE is building this formula into their systems, and we won't see output from that calculation until December. That change in our revenue makeup, that drop in state aid, has changed the percentage relationship, the composition of our total revenues. Heretofore, we had said that we were supported 54% from local property taxes and 37% by state aid. But that 37% state aid included funds that were attributable to the 20-some thousand students that ultimately weren't here to be educated. They went elsewhere. Now, under the new funding formula, this composition has, in my opinion, become more clear in terms of how are the students that are educated here in Columbus schools, how they are funded. And you can see it changed. 70% of the students here, 70% of their support comes from property tax, and now 21% from state aid. Quite frankly, it was always like that.
Right.
It just looked different because of the way the funding formula worked. So this really isn't a behavioral change. This is an accounting change. So that's a clearer picture of where the dollars come to support the education of the students that are educated here in Columbus schools. On the expenditure side, included in purchase services were those deductions. And you can see here that purchase services has dropped, 217 million in 22 and out to about 240 million in the latter years. And so it's that differential that causes that increase in projected cash balance. But again, this is where the charter and voucher deduction appeared on our forecast and financial statements. Like with revenue, this too changed the composition of our expenditures. Heretofore, you can recall, I would always explain to you, look, it says that we have 60% in personnel and 27% in purchase services, but I always did a call out because a significant amount of that purchase service were for those deductions. And I know I told you before that a more typical breakdown would be around 80 to 85% in personnel. When we look at the November forecast and how the expenditures break out now, it is 85% personnel. And honest, I told the committee back when I presented this, I didn't like force fit it to be 85%. I actually ran the numbers and I went, oh, look, it is 85. It actually is 85%. And you see purchase services now drops down to a more typical 8% level for us. So the composition now, both in terms of revenue and expenditures, I'm going to use the phrase, is clearer in terms of the support and composition of expenditures for the students that we educate here in Columbus schools. I provide two more charts. I won't go through them, but this is for everybody who loves the data. These are the actual numbers. These are the annual contributions to changes in in ending cash balance. I highlight the two lines that I've just explained to you, and you can see on an annual basis that they far outweigh in terms of impact any of the tweaks and minor changes I've made in the other lines. This next is the accumulation annually, rather than each year separately. This accumulates it year to year, and over the time you can see each contributor to the $235 million movement in cash balance at the end of fiscal 25. So you can see that data, but the point of this is that when state aid contributed $711 million and expenditures contributed $908 million, that the other lines just pale by comparison. They're minor adjustments since the May forecast. So here's your 5-year forecast comparing revenues, expenditures, and your cash balance and reserve cash balance. And what are the takeaways here? Just that the new funding formula has affected both revenue and expenditures. It now shows that we are 70% funded by local tax revenue and 21% by state, and that our personnel expenditures are now going to be more clearly represented in our reports at 85% of total expenditures. As I said, ending cash balance and ending reserve balance remain positive throughout the forecast period, and that's good news. That's a good indicator with that metric, and that cash balance doesn't begin to decline until fiscal 25, the next to last year in this forecast. Going back to the quote that I said I liked that Mr. Brown had brought to my attention, that the goal of forecasting is not to predict the future, but to tell you what you need to know now to take meaningful action in the present. So what do we know from this, and what are the actions that we need to take? And I would summarize those in 3 key areas. On local property taxes, the key question for the board is, when might we need another levy to fund our operations? And that's a question that FAC is going to prepare to discuss. That question is a very long-term question. It's not 5 years. It's at least 8. I will probably take it out to at least 2029, doing some trending so that we get an idea of when and how much levies will be needed, or we might want to do to provide not just, I want to provide sustained financial support for the academic program. I don't want to wait for the metrics of cash balance to go below 30 days cash and be faced with a negative forecast, negative cash balance forecast in our 5-year forecast period. Because the longer you wait, the more you move from a revenue enhancement to an expenditure reduction. And an expenditure reduction impacts academic program, no matter how you slice it. So as your CFO, I will always be recommending to you to provide that sustained local funding to prevent getting into that reduction mode. Number 2, state aid. What are the keys here? We, I in particular, perhaps even you as board members, need to continue to lobby the General Assembly to ensure 2 things. 1, that the fair school funding model remain our model for calculating state aid. And 2, that we press them to fund the model because there was a 6-year phase-in period, and we're only in the first 2 years of that. So we need to press them and continue that battle to keep the model in place and to press for adequate funding. And thirdly, on the expenditure side, and we've said this time and time again, the academic plan drives your expenditures. And quite frankly, I can say this somewhat with a smile on my face, that's up to your superintendent. She and her team developed the academic plan and the operational plan that will meet your goals and your sub-goals, and that's what drives the expenditure side. I'm here to track that, help her cost that out, tell her the impact of that on the 5-year forecast and all of that. But the academic plan drives expenditures. So, kind of hearkening back, Board Member Beckley, to what you mentioned about our monthly report. Yes, the cash balance has improved, but that's not the reason to hire more teachers to reduce class size. The reason to hire teachers for reduced class size, is because it's part of your superintendent's plan. I didn't get there with you last time, but that's the point. So it's the academic plan that is designed to meet your goals that will drive expenditures. And so those are the 3 areas. Local property taxes, FAC will talk about that planning. We all need to lobby hard to keep the state funding model in place and get it fully funded. And then 3, and you're doing this, focus on the academic plan and let us cost that out and put that together so that we can go to those 2 entities, our local taxpayers and our state General Assembly, and ask for the funding that we need to support that academic plan that she's going to put forth. With that, I conclude my presentation of the 5-year forecast. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Questions for the treasurer or comments from the chairs? Board member.
Well,
Let's start with the comments for the chairs first.
just one word, sustainability. Sustainability, tied to a sentence that clearly states what he said succinctly. I mean, we want to be sure to ensure the sustainability necessary for us to progressively grow as a district, not only in student number, but also in student achievement at the end of the day. So he spelled it out very, very clearly. Thank you, Madam President.
Board member Beckerly.
Oh, real quick, one thing too. One thing.
Eric has something.
I've said it several times publicly, but I want to continue to reiterate it. It's the idea of ensuring we overturn stones, that we overturn stones. More traditionally, we've looked at consolidation as one of those methods, right? One of those tactics, if you will, of figuring out how we either recover dollars or save dollars. I want to look at some other opportunities that we have available. Treasurer Bahork and I have had some conversation. We'll continue to build upon this, looking at other tax instruments that we may be able to leverage that help us close some gaps. And more ideally, and we'll talk further about it, but more ideally on the capital side, as we continue this F&P process, where do we look strategically, intentionally to close gap where we know we need to strengthen our measure of sustainability to ensure 21st century facilities. So at the end of the day, we're going to do some discovery work to find out where those opportunities are, whether it's income tax sharing, what have you. So we'll look at that. But that's all I want to say. Thank you.
You're welcome. Board member Brown.
Just briefly, first, I want to commend you again. You and your team have done a really great job at putting this presentation together and at gathering the data and organizing the data in a way that makes it understandable both for the committee and for the board. So thank you. With respect to the data, I think it's really helpful to me, and I think to the entire board, to have a big picture view of things, to be able to step back and not look at, what are we going to do today and tomorrow, but what the picture is going to look like for the next 5 or 8 years or so. And then importantly, what can we do today that will affect those predictions about the future? And there are things, and I appreciate that you've laid those out. Part of that is keeping our eyes on the legislature about the formula and about funding the formula, and we have to pursue that and keep pressure on to have the best chance of success with that effort. We're not going to succeed, without it. And also, we've got this litigation effort coming up that we hope will also allow public schools to do better and over time. But there are other things that you've identified that we can start doing sooner rather than later in anticipation of the predictions and what we know, as well as to use this to help the planning. When, what year do we sit down and start talking more seriously about operating a levy or other kinds of issues? And for all of that, again, thank you.
Board Member Beckerly.
Can you go back one slide? I have a quick question. I just want to make sure I understand something. Okay, so blue is actual ending cash balance.
Blue is the projected ending cash, yes.
And yellow is?
Cash less 30 days of expenditures.
Okay, that's what I was hoping. Okay. Thought, and let's just putting this out there as something to think about. I'm not proposing anything, but just given how important it is for this funding formula to remain the methodology and it to be fully funded, and given we're the biggest district, I'm wondering if we should come up with some sort of a working group, committee, I'm not even sure who should be on it, but that somebody who's tasked with coming up with a strategy, minding the strategy. Yes, we need to get these people to testify in this date. Like, I just, it seems to me it's something that we should consider, and I'm just putting it out there to think about at the moment, but some sort of a structure or organization or group of people that are tasked with minding that in a real intensive sort of way. Yeah?
The work group that put this together, the superintendents and treasurers, I don't know how big the work group was, but there are critical members of that are still together, and we do participate in that. So I don't know whether you were talking about just something at Columbus Schools-based work group, but we are involved in the kind of overall statewide effort.
No, I guess I'm just
to work towards that, if that helps.
I think I'm just responding to your comment about, the board members can continue to lobby and I
Sure.
can continue to lobby. I just want to make sure we're intentional about that.
Okay.
And, maybe it's board members getting other board members throughout the state to go and lobby with them to reinforce it. I just think that's my only point.
Sure.
Oh, and in defense of my comment from the last board meeting, absolutely. And to the extent that I said something that suggested we should willy-nilly go out, that was me being flip, and I apologize, because that's not it. It should be the program. The program drives everything. And I think that I was coming from an assumption that we never quite have had enough money to implement the program as well as we wanted to. And so I did not mean to suggest that we make our decisions based on what's available at all. But really what I meant is, and it's more of a, it's a culture / mind / sense reality that we've been living under. And it seeps into our DNA a little bit. So when you say, you know, what do you need to get the job done? Sometimes people say, well, we'll never be able to afford it. And so it was partly I keep my eye on that, and partly just me being inarticulate and not clear. But I never, ever would have suggested that we just go out and do anything in response to what the balance sheet tells us is available, that it really is all, has to be way more strategic.
Yeah.
Thank you, Stan.
Thank you.
All right, we're gonna go into item 7, board members. Under board matters, we have item 7.1, which is a resolution to adopt Columbus City Schools interim goals for the district. I'll go ahead and read that resolution, ask for a motion, or ask for a second, and then we can have any discussion that we need to. So the resolution to adopt Columbus City Schools interim goals for the district, whereas the board has engaged the Council of the Great City Schools to help facilitate their own work around board goals and guardrails for the district. And whereas the project has now culminated in the finished product, now therefore be it resolved that the board adopts the Columbus City Schools interim goals for Columbus City Schools as contained in Exhibit A, which the board has in their packets and on board docs, which has the updates from the meeting that we had last week, that we discussed. So that is a motion. Is there a second?
So,
Second.
second.
All right, is there who did it? Who did the second?
Other than all
Board
four
member.
of them, Mr. Board Member Cole? Okay.
Is there discussion? See Board Member Beckerly? Okay.
Can we bring it up? The goals and guardrail, the interim goals, so we can see the,
I don't know if we have access
okay.
to do that. They don't have it. Okay.
No, well, that's, all right, well, then we can just talk it through. I just, I wanted to
Oh,
thank.
they got it.
There it is, perfect.
Wow.
Magic.
So- You guys are good, whoever just did that, thank you. That was kind of magical. Just to note that as a result of our conversation at the last meeting, Russ Brown has been terrific, and he, if you notice, there's a highlight blue in the 2024 or 25 and 25, 26, and there's a footnote there that basically just acknowledges, based on our conversation last time, that we were talking about it in the context of Portrait of a Graduate. But during the course of our conversations about this afterward, Russ pointed out really all interim goals should be reevaluated in year 3 to make sure they're really predictive, and that's what that footnote says. But first of all, I wanted to thank Russ for his work and the continuation of the really good discussion. And I really appreciated, I guess it's worth saying, that discussion and that thoughtfulness. And it was a pleasure to be part of it, really. And the other thing I just want to say is that this is really important, and I'm incredibly thrilled.
Anyone else?
I just think, Madam President, I'm grateful for, our sense of making this a living document that will constantly not only be monitored, but evaluated and assessed for, adaptability on our part and flexibility as an organization. So thank you.
Member Brown?
Brief comment, this is going to be very good for the district and for our
Yes.
students.
Member Ragland?
Well, congratulations to all of us. We've all put a tremendous amount of effort into doing this, and obviously, Dr. Dixon, you and your team, kudos to you. I really think that we've got a bright future because of the work that's been done here on this project. So, thank you, Madam President.
Yeah, I echo that, not to toot our own horn, but I will, because this was a big lift for this district. We
Yes.
were under a strategic plan that was in draft for a very, very, very
Right.
long time.
Absolutely.
And no more draft.
Right.
This is it. We have now set the guide. both as a short, medium, and long term with our portrait. And we have really set this district up to become that model that we all so want and our community has been asking for so long. And this board did it. Yep. And this administration and this team and everyone that participated in it. So this was no small feat. And thank you to AJ,
Wherever you are.
pushed us, wherever you are, who really pushed. And we still have more work to do. We are not, and just like you, Board Member Cole said, this is not put it up on the shelf type of a thing. This is something that now we have the hard work to do, and that's the monitoring and the accountability pieces to the community and the constant, continuous improvement and growth mindset around this process. So I'm excited. Congratulations to all who were involved. Will you please call the roll?
Ms. Beckerly?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Cole?
Yes.
Mr. Ragland?
Yes.
President Adair?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Yay! Good job, everyone. All right. Okay, we're going to go ahead and move into item 8, which is our consent agenda. This evening's consent agenda consists of item 9.1 to 23.7. Are there any items that a member would like to remove from the consent agenda for separate vote? Okay, seeing none, is there a motion to approve?
I will move that we approve the consent agenda.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any items the board member would like to discuss? Board Member Brown.
Yes, I just want to point out, and I think all of our board is aware of, and I thank the administrative team to put this the professional development conference schedule together with OSBA's withdrawal from NSBA. None of us will be invited or allowed to attend any NSBA events whatsoever. And I know that these are placeholders if and when OSBA gets back into NSBA and same with us, then we would have this to be able to proceed. But I think it's just helpful to note that.
Any other comments? Board Member Beckerly.
Regarding 18.2, which is the Broadspire Services Agreement, I just want to commend the administration and our talent department. I think this is a really, having experienced some of this from the user side, I really think it's a good move to find people, entities and organizations that are expert at doing this and managing this. And I would just like to request that we do some, and I think I already spoke with Mike before the meeting, and he's already on it in terms of, the only downside about, contracting some of this effort out to a third party is making sure that they are being vigilant and making sure our customer service is accomplished. So, and a request at some point, whether it's when we renew this or at some point a year, 2 years, something appropriate, is that we get back some data that says, yes, it's working for our employees. But I think other than that, it's to be commended.
Is that it? Sorry. Is that all you had, Board Member?
That is all.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry to surprise you with that.
More.
My reputation precedes me.
I just want to take a moment to congratulate in item 12.4 the diplomas that we have awarded this evening to our Ohio 22 plus adult high school graduates. We have Lisa Dickey, Banish Sharma, and Ron Wren. Congratulations on earning your 22 plus adult diplomas. Board Member Brown.
Just briefly, one of the items that we are here to approve is the 15.1 pertaining to buying snow and ice removal services. It's a pretty large contract, and this was one that I had perhaps not realistically, but I had high hopes that we would do better for our lead qualified vendors. I don't know, and I don't fully understand why we did not. But I think this is an example of the kind of thing where we can do better. And I want to better understand this, and I'd like the board to support looking into this and actively looking for other areas where we can impact and improve on our lead vendor program. We have to do better than we have, and you know, our local businesses, our economically disadvantaged businesses, those in the Black community and other minority communities, you know, we want them to be participating, and yet here's an example of one that just did not. This was one that could be broken down into smaller pieces. This was one that you know, just we didn't get there. You know, I understand that the cost is you know, a good one, the bid, and you know, we need to do this, of course, but it may be a good place to start another look at the LEAD program.
Did I respond?
I was just saying thank you for those comments, Board Member Brown. I just want to remind everyone, we still actually do have a committee that's actually a working group or whatever we called it, I forget, that you, Board Member Ragland, and Dr. Pierce were on to actually look at the LEAD program. So I think it got away from us with COVID. So it is a priority of the board. And so, yeah, definitely something we,
And I'm
it's
well
still
aware of
standing.
that, so I appreciate your pointing out that we have this group.
Beckerly Ragland.
I just think in conjunction with that, it might be worthwhile to consider, I think AJ brought it up at some point in one of our trainings, that a policy that looks into employment of our families as a way to really impact student outcomes, even as maybe even a priority that supersedes LEDE. So I'd love for that to be part of the
Yeah, it was actually Board
consideration.
Member Ragland who actually received the MBE award last week. Yeah, it was actually Board Member Ragland's vehement suggestion. Yeah.
But yeah, thank you for that. But to Board Member Beckerly's point, I think this particular contract that you're speaking of in 15.1, Board Member Brown, I think the explanation that was given and understood in this case, we lost a lot of LEDE vendors at the beginning of the pandemic. One of the reasons why we saw such low response to this particular bid, despite all of the efforts that our buildings and grounds, and I believe this was buildings and operations department really engaged in breaking these bids down, making them very easy for LEDE vendors to respond. But a lot of those vendors are not currently out there anymore. You know, we talked a lot at the beginning of the pandemic about, you know, who were the businesses that would be going away and wouldn't be coming back because of the pandemic. And then you've got these types of challenges coupled with the worker shortage, and you know, there you have the example here that you've expressed. But I do think we would do well, to Board Member Beckerly's point, to start looking at using our LEDE businesses as a means to employ some of our families. You know, these businesses can provide some jobs for our folks, really good wages for those folks and benefits as well. And the better that they can do in hiring our families, the better our students are coming through our doors equipped with what is needed to learn. And so I got a very detailed explanation from the administration on this particular piece of legislation. And I've heard this in some of the other areas where we're trying to do some work in building some capacity for LEDEs, and everything that the administration expressed. They did everything that they could with this particular piece of legislation to try and get more responses. and you know, we just came up short with this particular instance, but it had more to do with the fact that we've lost so many of our businesses due to the pandemic, and not anything on Ms. Wise's part or on the administration's part. So I was comfortable with that and the explanation I got from Dr. James and Mr. Oldham as well, because I had some of the same concerns. So thank you, Madam President.
Thank you for that, Board Member Ragland. Any other comments about items on the consent agenda? Okay, please call the roll.
Let's get there, hang on. Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Cole?
Yes, with abstention to 18.1.
Mr. Ragland?
Yes, with the exception of 12.2, from which I abstain.
President Adair?
Yes, with the exception of item 8.1, from which I abstain. 18.1, sorry.
Thank you. And Ms. Beckerly?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you. The consent agenda has been approved. All right, we are going to now move into public comment on non-agenda items. Let me remind the speakers, we have some that are virtual, we have some in person, that each individual will have 3 minutes to address the board to provide comment on items of that they would like to discuss. Let me remind all participants that the board will not accept comment on matters that may become before this board for administrative hearing, or a matter, because of its nature, is deemed appropriate to discuss in executive session, which can include student discipline. So we're going to go ahead and have our first speaker, who will join us virtually, Board Liaison, or Government Affairs Supervisor Nichols. Do you have the first caller?
President Dare, the speaker's on the line.
Okay, thank you. We have Shauna Stallworth here to talk with us on breach of safety, board action, hold the staff accountable for not contacting me as parent about a safety breach. Ms. Stallworth, you may begin.
Okay, so my daughter and some of her other peers were at school on the school laptops, and were able to assess what that was not being safe to, you know, school. It had nothing to do with school academics, and I know that for virtual learning, you have to have safe computers where they can only access school applications, and this was not implemented on those laptops. The laptops were seized on that Monday. They took my kid to the office along with her other peers and discussed about, you know, asked them questions about what websites that they were visiting. They found out what websites they were visiting. The next day, I know, and the school didn't inform them. And this could have, you know, caused safety issues with my daughter and her friends or her peers. And so they continued to have meetings throughout the week. When my daughter left that meeting, her and her friends went back to the classroom crying to their teacher about all that had happened. And so that following Wednesday, the librarians pulled them to the side. They had a luncheon meeting. They discussed the matter that took place. I still was not informed. I called the school and asked the librarian if she needed a permission slip to have this type of meeting adjourned. So she apologized and said that, you know, she was talking about they were leaders, and she gave me a whole nother subject as to what they were talking about. And my daughter later explained to me that meeting was about the breach of safety on those laptops. And so on that Friday, my daughter was acting really strange. She didn't want to touch her phone. And, you know, finally I got it out of her, and she explained to me that, you know, they were able to access through TikTok application that I later found out. I went to this app and was able to pull it up. The first thing, it was a chatting app. It's supposed to be an app for teenagers to go and chat and a cool place for teenagers to chat live. And however, the first thing I saw was about a 17 or 18-year-old man exposing his genitalia. And so I was confused, mixed up, constrained. I was going through all these emotions, and my daughter told me something was strange the whole week. I was trying to figure it out. The girls, when they had the meeting with the librarian, they got in the car, and the school never contacted me about any of it.
Thank you, Ms. Stolworth. Your time is actually up, but we do appreciate those comments and bringing that to the attention of the administration. Actually, this issue around cyber is come up, so they are looking at it. We're gonna have them get back in contact with you for your immediate resolution. But as a district as a whole, it is something that I've actually talked to the superintendent about myself in terms of the content that our children have access to. So thank you so much. It's such an important topic, and we will have administration give you a call back.
Okay, thank you.
You are welcome. Our next speaker is we have Ms. Upchurch, and I think she's here in person. You can go ahead and come to the podium, ma'am. You are here to talk to us about bullying, and the board action is, why did the school allow my kids to get bullied? You have 3 minutes to address the board, and you may begin.
Yes, I'm here again, once again, for the same thing. My children, once again, is being bullied inside of Columbus City Schools. I have reported multiples of threats from the children in the little 7 to 10 gang members at Ames Middle School to the principal, and nothing is getting done. We knew 2 weeks prior that my children was going to get jumped at that school. I informed Miss Lee of this. She had all the documents, all the everything. It shouldn't take for me to have to get loud up there at y'all school for something to be done, and then what be done, my kids be the ones kicked out. I know you say we can't talk about the expulsion and all this, but basically that's what the bullying led to. I don't know how much more Columbus City Schools is going to be okay with this. My daughter was at home once again trying to take her life. Nobody at Columbus City Schools was trying to hear me. I called multiples of times for Dr. Dixon, no phone call back, no nothing. If my child was to harm herself, evidently none of y'all would care, because nobody cared about my kids getting bullied at school. What are y'all gonna do to fix this? I sat here at this whole meeting here, y'all talking about a wellness this, mental health this. What about bullying? What about bullying is y'all gonna do? Nobody can never answer it. So I'm really confused on y'all school district. Like, y'all put money into what, for what, and not the right stuff. What do y'all have for bullying? What do y'all have for bullying in y'all schools? Nobody can answer it. Y'all have anything. My child is trying to take her life at the age 13 because of bullying. Look how many kids have already took their life because of bullying. This is so unfair. And at the end of the day, we're the ones that get kicked out of school each time. Why? Because nobody never looks at why I'm going off at y'all school. My daughter was escorted by y'all safety and security and was still jumped. Something we knew 2 weeks prior. I have got my kids out of school multiples of times. I have text messages from my kids. Mom, please come and get me. They trying to jump me. I have to leave work as a single parent and go get my children. That is not fair at all. And for us to be looking like the victims once I go off, but when I'm calm, cool, and collective, nobody hears what I'm saying. But as soon as Miss Upchurch go up there yelling at y'all principals and safety security, I'm the bad person. That's not fair at all. That is not fair. And something has to give. I've been here once before for the same matter.
Well, Thank you, Ms. Upchurch, for addressing the board. Your time is up. You are part of an administrative process right now, so we cannot comment on the facts, which we already let you know that that would be the case. We can provide you, we'll have the administration provide you information about the what bullying information we have and our policy on that, as well as any other sort of thing that you need around that situation in terms of the bullying resources.
Yes.
I think you do bring up a very important point about the suicide rate and bullying. It is a big problem in our district and something that we are aware of. So we'll get you those resources.
Yeah, but one last question. Y'all got information, but is y'all teachers and principals not trained on it or something? Because if us as parents is bringing it to their attention and nothing is getting done, like I said, we knew 2 weeks prior, and my kids missed a whole week of school due to death in the family. And once they get back, the situation still ain't handled. That's what I'm saying. What is y'all teachers and principals trained on?
I absolutely hear you, and I hear those concerns, and we'll have the superintendent follow up on that part as well. And again, you are part of an administrative process, which is the right avenue to handle your factual dispute. And so we'll continue that process with you and your family and your children, okay?
Okay.
All right, thank you so much for coming today. Okay, we are going to go into executive session for a brief moment. I think Board Member Beckerly has the motion.
I move that the Board of Education recess into executive session per section 121.22 G1 Ohio Revised Code to consider the appointment, employment, or compensation of public employees.
Is there a second?
Second.
Please call the roll.
Mr. Cole?
Yes.
Mr. Ragland?
Yes.
President Adair?
Yes.
Ms. Beckerly?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you so much. We are now going to recess into executive session. We will come back to officially adjourn this meeting. Board members, you can leave your stuff. This will literally take